What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors walks into what he thinks is a friendly morning show interview, only to find himself ambushed by a host with a hidden agenda? What you're about to witness is the moment Danny DeVito's legendary patience finally snapped on live television, creating one of the most explosive confrontations in morning show history. The cameras were rolling, millions were watching, and nobody was prepared for what came next. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about live television. It started like any other Tuesday morning at the Good Morning America studios. Danny DeVito had arrived early, sipping his coffee and chatting with the makeup crew about his latest project. The 78-year-old actor was in high spirits, excited to talk about his new environmental documentary that had been his passion project for the past 3 years. He had specifically requested to appear on Good Morning America because he believed it would give him the perfect platform to discuss the serious climate issues featured in his film. "Danny, you look great this morning," the makeup artist said, putting the finishing touches on his appearance. "You seem really excited about this interview." "I am," Danny replied, his eyes lighting up. "This documentary means everything to me. We spent 2 years filming in remote locations, showing how climate change is affecting real communities. I think George will really appreciate the depth of the research we put into this." What Danny didn't know was that George Stephanopoulos had spent the previous evening poring over a completely different set of notes. Instead of preparing questions about the documentary, George had been researching every controversial moment from Danny's decades-long career, every off-color joke from his early stand-up days, every tabloid rumor that had ever circulated about the actor. The network executives had made it clear they wanted ratings, and nothing drove ratings like controversy. As Danny walked onto the bright studio set, he waved cheerfully at the audience and settled into the familiar interview chair. The studio lights felt warm and welcoming, and he could see friendly faces in the crowd. George approached with his trademark professional smile, shaking Danny's hand firmly for the cameras. "Danny DeVito, everyone," George announced to the live audience, who erupted in enthusiastic applause. "Thank you so much for being here with us this morning." "Thanks for having me, George," Danny replied, adjusting his position in the chair. "I'm really looking forward to talking about this documentary. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about." George nodded, but there was something in his expression that Danny couldn't quite read. "Yes, we'll definitely get to that," George said, his tone already shifting slightly. "But first, I think our viewers would be interested in hearing about some of your other recent activities." Danny's smile faltered just a bit. "Other activities? Well, I mean, the documentary has pretty much consumed my life for the past few years. That's really what I'm here to talk about." "Of course," George said, shuffling through his notes in a way that seemed deliberately theatrical. "But before we dive into your environmental work, I want to address something that I think is important for our viewers to understand about who you are as a person." The studio audience fell silent, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Danny leaned forward slightly, his brow furrowing with confusion. "I'm sorry, what do you mean by that exactly?" George's smile became more forced, more artificial. "Well, Danny, you've built a career on playing, shall we say, morally questionable characters. The Penguin in Batman, Frank Reynolds in It's Always Sunny. These aren't exactly role models for children. Don't you think there's a certain responsibility that comes with your platform?" Danny blinked several times, clearly caught off guard by the direction of the questioning. "George, I think you might be confusing the characters I play with who I am as a person. That's like saying Anthony Hopkins is actually a cannibal because he played Hannibal Lecter. But it's not quite the same thing, is it?" George pressed, his voice taking on a more aggressive tone. "Your characters consistently promote drinking, gambling, and generally destructive behavior, and you've been playing these types of roles for decades now. At what point do we start to question whether this is just acting, or if this reflects your actual values?" The color began to drain from Danny's face as he realized this wasn't going to be the interview he had prepared for. "I came here to talk about climate change, George, about real issues affecting real people. I don't understand why we're having this conversation." "Climate change," George repeated, flipping through more papers. "Yes, let's talk about that, because I have to ask, Danny, isn't it a bit hypocritical for someone who has spent decades glorifying excess and waste on screen to suddenly position himself as an environmental advocate?" Danny's jaw tightened visibly. "Excuse me? I mean, look at your filmography," George continued, now fully in attack mode. "Matilda, where you play an abusive father figure. Batman Returns, where you literally try to murder innocent people. It's Always Sunny, where your character regularly engages in schemes that would be considered fraud in the real world. And now you want us to take you seriously as some kind of environmental crusade. The audience was completely silent now, the tension in the studio thick enough to cut with a knife. Danny took a deep breath, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. George, I don't know what kind of interview you think you're conducting here, but this is completely inappropriate. Inappropriate? George leaned back in his chair with a smirk. I think what's inappropriate is a celebrity using their platform to push political agendas when their entire career has been built on entertaining people through morally bankrupt characters. Political agendas? Danny's voice rose slightly. Caring about the environment is a political agenda now? Wanting to leave a habitable planet for future generations is somehow controversial. When you use your celebrity status to influence public opinion, yes, it becomes political, George shot back. And frankly, Danny, I'm not sure you're the right messenger for this particular message. Danny stared at George for a long moment, his famous expressive eyes narrowing as the full weight of what was happening began to sink in. Not the right messenger, he repeated slowly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. George, let me get this straight. You invited me on your show under the pretense of discussing my documentary about climate change, and instead you're sitting here attacking my character based on fictional roles I've played. George didn't back down. If anything, he seemed emboldened by Danny's obvious anger. I'm simply asking the questions our viewers deserve to have answered. When a celebrity decides to become an activist, their credibility matters. My credibility? Danny let out a harsh laugh that echoed through the silent studio. You want to talk about credibility? Let's talk about the credibility of a journalist who ambushes his guests with gotcha questions instead of having an honest conversation about issues that actually matter. The camera operators exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether they should keep rolling. This was clearly going off script, but the raw drama unfolding was exactly the kind of content that would have people talking for weeks. Danny, I think you're overreacting, George said with a condescending tone that made several audience members visibly cringe. These are legitimate questions about your public persona and how it relates to the causes you're now championing. Overreacting? Danny's voice cracked with disbelief. George, I've been in this business for over 40 years. I've sat through thousands of interviews, and I have never, not once, been treated with such blatant disrespect by someone who calls himself a professional journalist. Disrespect? George scoffed. I'm doing my job, Danny. I'm asking the hard questions that other interviewers are too starstruck to ask. Danny leaned forward in his chair, his short stature somehow making him appear even more formidable in his anger. Your job? Your job is supposed to be informing the public, not creating tabloid drama for ratings. Do you have any idea how much time and effort went into making this documentary? Do you know that we interviewed climate scientists from 6 different countries? That we documented rising sea levels in communities that are literally disappearing? I'm sure it's very important to you, George replied dismissively, not even looking up from his notes. But our viewers are more interested in understanding who Danny DeVito really is behind all the characters. Who I really am. Danny's voice was rising now, his famous animated gestures becoming more pronounced. I'll tell you who I really am, George. I'm someone who cares enough about this planet to spend 2 years of my life, and a significant portion of my own money documenting environmental destruction. I'm someone who believes in using whatever platform I have to make a difference. But apparently, you're more interested in playing gotcha journalism than actually learning anything. George's smile became even more artificial. Danny, I understand you're passionate about your project, but you have to understand that your past work raises questions about your sincerity. When someone spends decades playing villains and degenerates, and then suddenly wants to be taken seriously as an environmental advocate, people are going to be skeptical. The audience was shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Now, several people were whispering to each other, clearly disturbed by the hostile tone of the interview. Danny noticed their discomfort, and it only fueled his anger further. Skeptical. Danny stood up from his chair, his compact frame radiating fury. George, let me educate you about something called acting. It's when performers pretend to be other people for the purposes of entertainment. The fact that I've played memorable villains doesn't mean I'm actually a villain. It means I'm good at my job. Please sit down, Danny, George said, his tone now taking on a patronizing quality that made even the camera crew wince. I think you're proving my point about your temperament. My temperament? Danny remained standing, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. You ambush me with personal attacks. You dismiss legitimate environmental concerns as political propaganda. And then you have the audacity to criticize my temperament when I defend myself. I'm simply trying to have an honest conversation, George replied, his voice dripping with false sincerity. But clearly, you're not prepared to discuss your career choices in a mature way. Mature? Danny's laugh was bitter now. You want to talk about maturity? A mature journalist would have done his homework. A mature journalist would know that I've been involved in environmental causes for over 20 years. A mature journalist would understand that playing a character doesn't define who you are as a person. George shuffled his papers again, clearly enjoying the chaos he had created. Danny, I've done my homework. I know about your environmental work, but I also know about the bar fights, the public arguments, the reports of difficult behavior on set. These things matter when you're trying to position yourself as a moral authority. The studio fell completely silent. Even the technical crew had stopped their usual background movements. Everyone frozen by the sheer audacity of George's attack. Danny's face went through several color changes from red to white and back to red again. Bar fights. Danny's voice was dangerously quiet now. Public arguments. George, are you seriously bringing up tabloid gossip from the 1980s? Are you actually going to sit there and repeat unsubstantiated rumors as if they're fact? I'm reporting what's been documented, George replied smoothly. Our viewers have a right to know about the full picture of who you are. The full picture. Danny took a step closer to George's desk, his anger now barely contained. Here's the full picture, George. I'm a 78-year-old man who has worked his entire life in entertainment. I've made people laugh. I've made people think. And yes, I've played some characters that weren't saints. But unlike some people in this room, I've never pretended to be something I'm not. George's eyebrows raised at the implied insult. Are you suggesting that I'm being dishonest? I'm not suggesting anything, Danny shot back. I'm stating it outright. You're being dishonest with your viewers. You're being dishonest with me. And frankly, you're being dishonest with yourself if you think this is journalism. The accusation hung in the air like a thunderclap. George's carefully maintained composure cracked for just a moment, his eyes flashing with genuine anger before he quickly recovered his media smile. Danny, I think you need to be very careful about the accusations you're making on live television. Careful. Danny let out a sound that was part laugh, part growl. You want me to be careful? After you've spent the last 10 minutes trying to destroy my reputation on national television, after you've dismissed decades of my work and questioned my integrity based on characters I've played, you want me to be careful. The studio audience was completely captivated now. Some people leaning forward in their seats, others covering their mouths in shock. This was unlike anything they had ever witnessed on morning television. George glanced nervously at the cameras, clearly aware that this confrontation was spiraling far beyond his control. Danny, I understand you're upset, but I'm simply doing my job as a journalist, George said, his voice now carrying a slight tremor that betrayed his growing anxiety. Sometimes that means asking difficult questions. Difficult questions. Danny's voice exploded through the studio. George, a difficult question would be asking me about the challenges of filming in remote locations, or about the scientific methodology we used in the documentary, or about the communities we featured, and how they're being affected by rising sea levels. What you've been doing isn't journalism. It's character assassination, disguised as an interview. George tried to regain control, shuffling his papers with exaggerated authority. I think our viewers can judge for themselves whether my questions have been appropriate. Your viewers? Danny whirled around to face the audience directly, his arms spread wide. Let me ask you people something. Did you come here this morning expecting to watch a respected journalist ambush a guest with personal attacks? Did you tune in hoping to see someone's life's work dismissed and their character questioned based on movies they made? Several audience members shook their heads, and Danny could see the support in their faces. It only fueled his righteous anger further. You see that, George? Danny pointed at the audience without taking his eyes off the host. Those are real people with real intelligence, and they can see exactly what you're doing here. They know the difference between legitimate journalism and whatever this pathetic display is supposed to be. George's face was beginning to flush red now, his professional mask slipping more with each passing second. Danny, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice and return to your seat. We're trying to conduct a professional interview here. Professional? Danny's laugh was harsh and bitter. George, there is nothing professional about what you've done here today. You've violated every basic principle of ethical journalism. You've betrayed the trust of your viewers. You've wasted everyone's time. And you've shown a complete lack of respect for the serious environmental issues I came here to discuss. The environmental issues that you're not qualified to speak about, George shot back, his own anger finally beginning to show. You're an actor, Danny. You're not a scientist. You're not a policy expert. You're just another Hollywood celebrity trying to tell people how to live their lives. Just another Hollywood celebrity? Danny's voice was now a low, dangerous growl. George, I've been fighting for environmental causes since before you were old enough to tie your shoes. I've put my money where my mouth is. I've educated myself. I've used my platform to raise awareness and inspire action. What have you done, George? Besides sit behind a desk and tear people down. The question hung in the air, a direct challenge to George's self-proclaimed moral high ground. The host's face was a mask of pure rage, his eyes darting around the studio, as if searching for an escape. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. You want to talk about qualifications, George? Danny continued, his voice rising slightly, but still controlled. The only qualification you seem to have is a talent for being a bully. You're a coward. You're someone who uses his platform to project his own insecurities and failures onto others. And I refuse to be your punching bag. With that, Danny DeVito calmly unclipped his microphone, placed it gently on the desk, and without another word, turned and walked off the set, leaving a stunned George Stephanopoulos and an equally stunned studio audience in his wake. The cameras continued to roll for a few more awkward seconds, capturing George's bewildered expression before the show abruptly cut to a commercial break. The silence that followed was deafening, a testament to the magnitude of what had just transpired. The internet, of course, exploded. Within minutes, clips of the exchange were going viral, sparking a global debate about journalistic ethics, celebrity privacy, and the true nature of Hollywood's biggest stars. Was Danny DeVito right to walk out? Was George Stephanopoulos out of line? One thing is for sure, Good Morning America will never be the same. And the world just got a glimpse of a side of Danny DeVito we rarely see. A man of unwavering integrity, pushed to his absolute limit. What do you think about this shocking confrontation? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more exclusive content like this. If you were as shocked as we were by this interview, hit that like button and share this video with your friends. What are your thoughts on Danny DeVito's reaction and George's questions? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into celebrity drama and untold stories.